Welcome to Built by a Boss. I'm your host, Evelyn Brooks, journalist, award-winning producer, author, founder of In My Solitude LA. On this podcast, you'll hear unique origin stories, growth strategies, and meaningful insights from successful female founders and entrepreneurs who are leading conscious businesses and creating groundbreaking careers with intention. On our show today, Rhonda Richards-Smith. She's an award-winning psychotherapist and relationship expert. She's here to walk us through how to care for our mental health and well-being during the coronavirus pandemic. Her advice has been featured in Oprah Magazine, Us Weekly, Bravo TV, Ebony, Teen Vogue, and Glamour Magazine. Rhonda offers some really insightful tips and practical takeaway that we can use starting right now and in the future to reinvent our lives. Thanks for listening and enjoy the conversation. Hi, Rhonda.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's so good to talk to you.
Yay. So excited.
This must be such a busy time for you. I mean, I'm sure people never ask the psychotherapist how she's doing, but what is it like for you right now? Because so much is going on.
Yes, it has been a very interesting couple of weeks, right? I'm doing well. I think, I'm a wife and a mom. And so I've kind of had to deal with what everyone else has been dealing with, right? Kind of like trying to figure out school schedules and kids, working from home with their teachers and having a spouse at home who's working and just kind of trying my best to juggle it all, really. I don't want to even say balancing, but just doing my best to juggle everything and just do the best I can.
Absolutely. I think everybody is really trying to figure out the next thing without having any real idea of what's happening next because everything is uncertain. But how do we know that we're dealing with anxiety as a result of the coronavirus? Like, what kind of things should we be looking for in our own behavior?
Well, so one of the first things is something that I'm sure we've all seen on social media and the news, and that is this need to stockpile everything.
Right.
And I get it. And I mean, I'm a human being too, so I definitely want to be sure that we have what we need. And it's tough because we don't know what the future holds and we're not sure, what's going to happen. But that's definitely a telltale sign that we're definitely feeling some anxiety as a community. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think that it's any one particular person, but I think as a community, we're experiencing a lot of anxiety because there is so much uncertainty. And so it's like those little things, the little things that we try to control. Sometimes it's, whether it's controlling different assignments, maybe that you have at work. I've seen a lot of things online about, homeschooling with kids and, the importance of sticking to a routine, which is important. But sometimes when we're really rigid with our plans, it's more of an attempt to control and to kind of relieve ourselves of some of that anxiety by attempting to control a situation.
And I'm sure that's a big thing that's happening in a lot of families right now with the kids being home because, everybody's not kind of used to being together at certain hours of the day. How do you suggest people kind of manage that? Do you kind of make sure everybody has private time? How much do you tell the kids about what's happening?
I think it's definitely really important to talk to your kids about it because whether we realize it or not, whatever age they are, they know something is different, right? Even if your kids are very small, if everybody is all of a sudden at home, they're no longer going to school or to daycare, the kids are going to know something is going on. And even the energy in many of our homes at this point is very different. And even if we don't say anything, our kids are very intuitive. So we don't have to say a word. They know something's up. They know if you're concerned or if you're worried about something. So instead of keeping it a secret or trying to shield your kids from it, it's really important to talk to them about it. And when you're talking to your kids, it really depends on how old they are in terms of how you want to explain it versus older kids. And older kids are going to be getting exposed to a lot more information, of course. But for the younger kids, I think it's just important to be transparent. And, you can even describe it like talking about germs and saying that, there's a particular bug or a particular germ that's out there. that we're a little concerned about. So in order to keep our family safe, we are staying at home and we're, avoiding gatherings. And obviously for your older children, there may be some more dialogue around that, around how they're feeling about it. What their friends are talking about, and kind of like what some of the conversations are with their friends and with their classmates. And just, I think, really checking in with the kids that are older and have access to a little more information on how they're feeling and what they're thinking, and setting aside time every day to just check in.
Right.
And you don't have to check in daily about, well, how do you feel about the coronavirus, obviously, but just a check in, just a daily, how's it going? How are you feeling? What are you thinking about? I mean, I think that that's good to do anyway.
Right.
And I think that the situation that we're in now really gives us an opportunity to stop and slow down and just make sure that we're checking in with each other just to see that we're okay, because that can change from day to day.
And how much of your emotion should you let your kids see? I mean, because we're all triggered. And so when they see mommy crying, or maybe she snaps or something like that, how do you manage your own emotions in front of your kids?
I think this, and I say this often, it is very important for our children to understand that as parents, we are human beings.
Right.
And that's a gift that we don't often give our children. As parents, much of the time, we're focused on kind of putting a bright face, and you don't want your kids to see that you're upset or that you're worried. But that also doesn't give them permission to feel their feelings either.
Right.
And as they get older and we talk about, taking care of yourself and your mental health, that's how they learn that behavior. It's learned behavior that we pick up from generation to generation. As a parent, I'm no longer a human being. I suddenly don't have feelings. Those are the messages that we give our kids if we're not having those conversations. So while I don't think you should unload on your children, I do think it's absolutely reasonable for you to let your kids know, hey, I am worried. I'm concerned about this, and I want to be sure that we're safe. At the same time, reassuring them that at the end of the day, you have their best interests at heart. And as a parent, you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that they're safe and that they're okay.
You said something that was really important, and you talked about feeling your feelings. And I think this is one of those moments where if you're not a person who feels your feelings and you're at home and you're socially isolated, it could trigger other things that you're dealing with. How do you stay connected to your feelings?
This really presents us with an interesting opportunity, but a challenge for many. Some of us tend to be just naturally very reflective and reflect on our feelings on a regular basis. So for some of us, it's this is something that we do every day or that we do periodically. But for others, part of why this is such an intense crisis when we're talking about mental health is that it is forcing some people to be still and to be quiet.
Right.
And that is very different. There are many people that you encounter who they are, they're moving from first thing in the morning to, going right up until they go to bed. They don't stop. And for a lot of people, they're not stopping because they don't want to stop. Because if they do, then they have to actually be alone with their thoughts and process what's going on in their brain.
Right.
So for a lot of people, the situation that we're in is forcing people to stop. And so it is a challenge, but I do want to say, if it's something that's new, all of this kind of like reflection and thinking about your life and being intentional, you have to grant yourself some grace,
Right.
Throughout the process, because it's not something that comes easily. It's not as though, you're going to feel the feelings and everything's going to resolve. If you're going to feel the feelings, you may not feel so great for a while. Especially with some of the physical restrictions that we have going on right now. It's not going to feel so great. Some of the things that we would usually do to distract ourselves are not necessarily, it's not possible to engage in those activities necessarily anymore. So we're really having to take a look at ourselves, the relationships that we have with other people, and I think just our life trajectory overall. So it's incredibly powerful. I think for everyone, I think it's an incredible opportunity if we look at it that way, but it's scary. For many people, it's very, very scary to do that work. And when you're doing that work, it can impact the relationships that you have with other people, which is also a scary prospect for many. The idea that they might need to change some of the relationships that they're engaging in, or maybe eliminate them completely. But we're in a very unique point right now where I think people really have a great opportunity to just stop and take a look at where they're at and really see, are they living a life with intention? Are they living a self-directed life? Or is everything that they're doing and working toward based on what other people have imposed or other ideas that people have imposed on them? And so you really want to check where you're at and really see, are you directing your own life?
So do you think that has something to do with the fact that, there are so many people that are refusing to self-distance?
I definitely think that there's a connection, and there could be a number of things going on. For singles, for example, loneliness is something that we don't talk about a lot in the public per se, but loneliness is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And if you are someone who lives alone, and you're craving companionship, whether it be romantic or platonic, it can be really difficult to physically isolate yourself from everyone. For some, if you're isolating in your home, it means that you're with your family or you're with friends or roommates. But if you're living on your own, to self isolate can be very challenging, incredibly challenging, even with all the technological advancements. At the end of the day, being in your own home by yourself can feel very lonely, and it's a tough feeling to feel. And a lot of times people do what they can to engage in certain relationships just to avoid the feeling of loneliness itself. So it's an incredibly powerful feeling, and it's one that people don't want to feel. So I think in some instances people are still going out just because they don't want to feel that feeling of loneliness.
I totally get that because, you're looking at the number of people that do live alone, elderly people, and just the longer this lasts, the more isolated they're going to feel. But I think that the really beautiful thing about this moment that I'm really connecting to, and I'm sure many people are, is exactly how we are all connected. Like that has been the biggest revelation that I've had in the sense of everything that I do, every action that I take has an impact on the person next to me. So if I decide I'm going to go out and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to risk exposing, someone's grandmother or whatever to the virus, I may be thinking that I don't have an impact. But this is one of those moments where everything that we do matters. And it's like such a revelation if you really think about that.
Absolutely. We are all so interconnected. We are so interconnected, and you're absolutely right. We're all connected to one another. Everything, the way that we communicate with one another, and even the way that we live our lives, thinking that, we're doing our own thing, we're living our own lives, we're kind of like in the box. Everything you do, every action you take has an impact on someone else, no matter how big or how small.
It's
And I
really
think it's
incredible.
beautiful because you realize, what a positive difference you can make, if you're really intentional about what you're doing. We are all connected. Absolutely.
And I think it goes back to something that's really almost primitive in a way. When you think about how the human civilization has survived, we've survived by cooperation, not by competition. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so this is one of those moments where you can hoard everything, but you're not really helping others, therefore you're not really helping yourself at the same time. So
Exactly.
it goes back to like this really kind of fight or flight type of reaction to things, and I think it's an opportunity to really see yourself, right?
Absolutely. It's tough because, living in a Western world, everything is very independence oriented, right? Like everything you need to be able to do on your own. You need to be successful by yourself. But everything that we are seeing points to the fact that we are also connected. And the way we really make a difference is by banding together and working together in unison. And that's really how, at the end of the day, we make the greatest impact.
And I think that is a key thing because we're all in some way as human beings looking to have impact, looking to have significance. And I think that that is part of what's happening here in terms of helping people to see that making a sacrifice of staying at home or isolating yourself or whatever it is that you need to do is a way of making an impact. Like that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Staying at home.
You
That's
know,
how you make the impact. Absolutely.
we're seeing all of these things that are canceled, right? We're seeing events that are canceled. We're seeing graduations that are canceled.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that it's important to process, because, I do events, we all have different, things that we do. And so there's a feeling of loss, right? People are losing
Absolutely.
jobs,
Yes.
they're losing money, they're losing opportunities. So, how can we go about processing or at least acknowledging our feelings of loss and that it could be contributing to other emotions and other actions that we may be taking?
What we're experiencing in many instances that you mentioned is it's grief.
Yeah.
It's grief. We're grieving for, and I mean, this is such an unprecedented situation. I feel like all of us are dealing with some sense of grief in one form or another, whether it is, maybe a business opportunity or a business itself. I mean, I
Yeah.
know individuals who are on the verge of losing their business completely just because the nature of their job is events. They
Right.
do events, like that's the bread and butter. It's absolutely grief and loss. And we know with grief and loss, we're going to have any number of emotions that are going to come up. And we just have to kind of be okay with feeling them. We're going to feel angry, frustrated. We'll feel very disappointed and maybe even confused about, was this the path we were supposed to take?
Hmm.
What does this mean? If I only do events, or if I work in a certain industry and this is happening, what does that mean for me? But what I think is really critical about this is stepping outside of ourselves and really being clear about who you are, separate of what you do. Like, we are
Yes.
not what we do,
Yeah.
right? We're who we are. And so oftentimes we get so tied to certain titles or industries or jobs, and it can take over our entire identity. So it's almost like an identity crisis when we're stripped of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
If I don't have my career or this particular business, then who am I really? And that's really the work that we have to do at this point, and say, if I were never to do this work again, what would that mean, and who am I?
Yes.
Really being okay with that, really being okay with who you are and examining who you are. And if you take a look at who you are, and maybe you there are some changes that need to be made, then really starting from that point.
And how does one start from that point? How do you even identify that that's what you're feeling?
It's a complete loss of identity. And so if you can just strip down to to the most basic sense of who you are, down to stripping off your name, where you live, if you're a parent, you have to strip all of that away and really get clear about who are you and what do you enjoy, what are your gifts, what are your skills? Because many of us fall into certain industries because we can do it and it works. But I think more than anything, looking at what comes easy to you is a great place to start. What's something that just comes easy to you like the back of your hand?
Right.
And really starting from that point, and really starting to look at creating, even through grief and through loss. I feel like even if you can create something small, and that could honestly be anything. It could be journaling, it could be a poem, it could be a song, all the way up to a program or a business. Really just taking a look at what's something that you enjoy doing that comes very easy to you, and start with that. Even though you may be dealing with all of the other loss and grief and all of the other horrible things that might be going on, there's something about the prospect of creating something that is
Right.
so powerful. And I think if we can each tap into just creating anything, something, a painting, whatever it may be, something small. If we can start to just create small things, it's going to make a big impact over the long haul.
Yeah. That's really great
It's all
advice.
about like our psychic energy and like what we're focusing on. And so you've got to focus on creating, because if we're not creating, then we're destroying, right? We're just,
Right.
with our thoughts and our ideas, we're destroying our spirit. So it's important to, in any way that you can, focus on creating even something very small every day.
I love that. And another thing that I would love to really dive into a little bit is the idea of purpose and how can you be of service, and the idea of gratitude. Because
Mm-hmm.
what I've kind of discovered in my own life, the through line of what do you want to contribute, and looking in any area until you figure it out. How can I be of service? How can I help someone else's life? What can I give? And then it takes me out of myself and the focus on what I don't have. And then it just, in this crazy way, it just kind of falls in place.
Absolutely. It'll fall in line because see, we tend to want to, we love boxes. I know sometimes we say, oh, I want to think outside the box, or we love our boxes. We love,
Like,
as a
no, we
culture,
don't.
we love our boxes. As much as we say we don't like the labels in the boxes, it's easy for us to lock our thinking in. Even in terms of our goals or our hopes or our dreams, we think oftentimes in boxes. It's going to
Right.
look like this in this particular package. Instead of focusing on the gift itself, or like, something more general, like I want to bring people together. You could do that in almost any industry.
Right.
But instead, we look so specifically at, I want to do it this way at this company, with this schedule. And, sometimes we just get a little too specific, and we need to think a little more broadly about what it is that we have to offer the world. You can do what you were put on this earth. You can do that many places. There's not just one company or one way that you have to do it. There are many different ways and many avenues. And so I think just really being open to that. And that's tough because that's where the uncertainty pops up, and, not knowing where things are going to go tomorrow. But I think the more we can be open to opportunities and open to really and truly thinking outside the box, we're going to be better off in the long run and more fulfilled. And so I'm hoping people are using this as an opportunity, depending on their situation, to really explore other avenues or other skills that they have, other talents and other gifts that they want to contribute. Because we need everybody to tap into that.
Right. And
We need it.
You're absolutely right. And I think the thing that is challenging for all of us is the idea of change. You know,
Of
um,
course, we change is tough.
yeah,
It's tough.
and not knowing what that change is going to be. When things like this happen that are beyond our control and it changes our life, it feels like a death, right? It feels like
Absolutely.
it's a death of our ego as well, because we can't attach ourselves
Right.
to this thing anymore.
Yep. It's like grieving the loss of an idea of where your life would be and where it would go. None of us will ever be the same.
No. Mm-mm.
None of us will ever be the same.
Well,
And some of us will make dramatic changes. Others may be smaller depending on the situation, but we are all changed.
we're all changed forever. And it's interesting because we're all being triggered, and having our own little ways in which we're having anxiety or
Right.
meltdowns or whatever. So I have to share this with you. I had like my own little moment today that was so surreal and unexpected, but it like broke my heart open in a way, and it helped me identify what I was actually feeling. So I was on the computer and I was working, and I had the window open a little bit to get some fresh air. So I'm working, and then all of a sudden I hear the ice cream man, right? Like the little like the little song,
Oh
right?
my
And
goodness.
I was just like, is that the ice cream man? Like, it was so surreal and bizarre. So like I go outside and I see the ice cream truck, and I start crying. And I'm like, oh my God, why? And so I went back in and I just closed my computer, and I just listened to the sound of the ice cream man until I couldn't hear it anymore.
Wow.
And so then I just sat there for a minute and I thought about it. And I was just like, well, what did the ice cream man represent for me? Why was
Right.
this And so it represented a time of safety, a time
Absolutely. And
when,
innocence, right?
of innocence, when all I
Yeah.
had to worry about whether I was going to get a bicycle or a bomb pop.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Simpler times.
it's
Simpler
simpler
times.
times.
Yes.
And it actually gave me comfort. It helped me to understand that what I wanted to feel most importantly right now was a sense of safety. And it gave me a sense of compassion for, all of the people that are hoarding, or, all of these things that are buying guns and all of this.
Right.
It helped me to really understand, well, they're afraid.
Right. Right.
And this is their reaction to being afraid. And it's
Absolutely.
okay that we're afraid. It's just the choice that we decide to make, while we're afraid, can have a negative impact on other people. So if we can just connect with our fear and recognize it and like accept it, then maybe we can make a different choice.
Absolutely. The idea is not to avoid it. When we're
Yeah.
trying to avoid our feelings, I mean, I think that that's where trouble really starts to come up. We've just got to acknowledge, like, we're all afraid. We're all afraid, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's not bad. It just is, So we have to just allow ourselves to feel that and to be okay with that. And in this particular instance, that fear may or may not be gone by tomorrow.
Right.
Probably not.
Right.
Probably not. I think that the other issue is that there's not necessarily any relief coming anytime soon per se, in terms of getting a little bit of anxiety relief because the situation resolves itself in a day or two. We might be dealing with this for a little while. So I think that that's really what's contributing to a lot of the anxiety too. It's like we can't quite see the end. Sometimes we feel a little more comfort when we know that we're going through something difficult, but we have like a rough idea of when it's going to be over and when it's going to end. And with
Right.
this, there's uncertainty about that. So I
Right.
think that that's part of why we're feeling a little more anxious with this particular situation as well.
Right.
And we're constantly getting new information. It's a lot to process.
And here's the thing, we're also looking outside of ourselves for an answer. And I think that is maybe part of where the shift comes, where
Hmm.
perhaps we can tap more into, our intuition. Perhaps it is developing a spiritual practice, or, a mindfulness, whatever it is that you can do to kind of find a place where you can access peace.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's and a one thing that I do want to mention, like if you're starting to work from home, which is incredibly different. I think really being mindful about how you set up your space,
Right.
in your home and even outside of wherever it is that you're working, making sure that you set up your home to where you can be as comfortable as possible, to
Hmm.
where you can be as peaceful as possible. So that way you can do some of that internal work. We have to like kind of make it a little easier on ourselves to be able to do that. So it's okay to, surround ourselves with things that we love, whether, it's a particular scent, or, it's a candle, or it's maybe a small green plant or flower that you might have, anything that that can spark some joy in you. I
Hmm.
think that when we do that, that really makes it that much easier.
That's amazing advice. So, this is something too. I've been noticing kind of all of the different reactions that people are having. And some of it is across socioeconomic lines. Some people have more access to these things that we're talking about. There are some people that just cannot work from home.
Right.
They work in the service industry, or they're supporting us at hospitals. And how can we support them, and how can they take care of themselves, because they're kind of like out there on the front lines, not really getting the relief that we are, and maybe economically they can't stay at home.
Absolutely. I actually have a very close friend who is a physician, and she is on the front lines of everything that's going on right now. And so I've been checking in with her periodically. It's incredibly difficult for people that are, again, working in grocery stores that are still open. The people that are driving the trucks to get the groceries to the grocery stores. I mean, there's so many different industries that are impacted in this way, and they are continuing to work. And so it's incredibly difficult. I think one of the things that we can do as community members, as consumers, is when we are engaging with these people, whether it's at stores, or let's say if we are at medical appointments, or just accessing other services that are still available, I think
Hmm.
being patient and kind in our interactions with them, it's incredibly important. They are under such an intense amount of stress and pressure. It's unbelievable. Many aren't getting breaks. It's just incredibly difficult. And it's really difficult to see them go through that with, sometimes very little relief. And so I think that if we can be patient with them when we are receiving services and being kind, that's very, very important. And for themselves, I think that really making sure that they do everything they can, that when they leave the job for the day, that they do their best to focus on trying to leave whatever it is that happened on the job, leaving it there. And I know that's very difficult for our healthcare providers because they're on the front lines of everything. And they are getting a front row seat to different things in our healthcare system and maybe some challenges with our healthcare system, right? With getting people access to services. And they're backlogged and people are very frustrated and upset because of the wait times in emergency rooms and things like that. So I think more than anything, really, it's actually more critical for them to take care of themselves because they're not going to be able to care for others if they're not taking care of themselves. And it's more critical now than ever before that they do that. And I can tell you, anyone that works in healthcare or mental health specifically, we are often the worst when it comes to taking care of ourselves because we're so used to taking care of everybody else.
Exactly.
That's just the reality of it. Those of us that are in certain service industries, we're just used to caring for others, making sure everybody else is okay and checking in. But sometimes we don't do that for ourselves. So I think, whether it is checking in with a therapist that still, might be available online, or if it's checking in with a really close friend and just, if you need to vent or just kind of like review everything that's happened for the day so that you can release it and let it go. So it's really important to release it somehow. I'd prefer that if you do it with a live person, someone that you can talk to over the phone, just to kind of like vent a bit. But I think journaling can also be very powerful. And journaling is something that sometimes people get stuck in being perfectionists about journaling and thinking journaling needs to look a particular way. And sometimes you can just do a brain dump, meaning you can just write whatever it is that's in your head and put it on the paper. Right. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be a poem. It doesn't have to be, some incredible work. You're just getting your thoughts out of your head and putting it on paper. And there's something very powerful about writing down what's in our head because we're getting it out. We're just getting it out of there. We're getting it out. And if you need to refer to it later or pull some information from it, then so be it. But sometimes we just need to get things out of our head, whether by talking to somebody else or just writing it down on paper. So I think that that's very important. And I think particularly for people in these industries, ideally you want to do it before you go to bed so you get a great night's rest, ideally. It's just a lot to process. It's just a lot. It's a lot to process. And that's why I think it's so important that whatever we do, that we don't neglect our mental health. Because if we neglect that and we don't take care of ourselves, it's really going to be that much worse. And we need everyone to be as strong as possible, especially those in healthcare positions and mental health. Again, working in the stores, working front lines. It's incredibly important that they stay mentally well, yes, in addition to being physically well.
When do you call a professional?
Anytime. Anytime.
Okay.
I would definitely say
because sometimes you feel like that you have to really be off the hinges.
Right,
It's
right,
just like,
right.
help us
And
understand.
we tend to wait until a crisis or something really dramatic happens where it's like, okay, clearly I need to call somebody. But really there's no need to wait. If you get the inkling that you need to process something with somebody, and I usually just describe it like that, you need to process a situation or a thought or a feeling, maybe a behavior that you just don't understand why you did something, that's the time to talk to somebody.
Okay.
You don't have to wait for some large major crisis to come up to reach out. And I think that's the mistake that many make is just waiting until the last second. And sometimes when you wait till the last second, it's almost too late for it to really be effective. So ideally, if you even get the inkling that you need to talk with someone, talk with someone. Absolutely. I wouldn't hesitate on that.
And sometimes it's cultural, right?
Absolutely. Of course.
Is
Absolutely.
How does that rear its head in a situation like this that we're facing?
What I often say is, in certain communities, therapy is frowned upon. And I feel like, overall it's 2020. I think we're getting there. We're making some progress in that area, which is great. But again, there are still going to be some people that just don't buy into therapy. Oftentimes in those communities, people are still getting their therapy.
Hmm.
People are still getting their therapy. They're just not getting it from an actual therapist.
Right.
They're getting it from their friend, or they're getting it from somebody down the street. But what happens as things escalate, as crises arise, and as things get really heavy, that burden is often too much for your best friend to handle and to manage. I've seen a lot of friendships end, and different relationships really fracture and shatter because it's just too much pressure for that particular friendship. And the
Right.
reality is,
Yep.
it's like trying to create a therapeutic relationship within a friendship, and you really can't do that. You
Right.
really can't do that. And so you even see this in romantic relationships. And, when I work with singles and people that are dating and some couples, this comes up too, where, they want the other person to be everything and to kind of like fix everything. And, I'm going to tell you everything and then you're going to fix it. It just doesn't work that way. And it adds so much extra pressure on your personal relationships. You're really better off just talking to a professional.
Right. But we need tools to be able to do so. And then we need to be able to recognize when we're in trouble.
Absolutely. And to be held accountable. Because a lot of times, friends and family, again, depending on their perspective, they're going to be biased, of course, because that's your family member, or that's your friend. They may not want to hurt your feelings. There may be certain topics that they avoid because they know that they're difficult for you. You're not necessarily going to have that in a therapeutic relationship. A therapist is going to hold you accountable. They're going to follow up and talk about, hey, did you implement the strategies that we discussed last time? If you didn't,
Right.
why not?
Right.
So you don't usually get that in your interpersonal relationships. So that's why I think it's incredibly important to reach out to a professional if you feel like you need to talk with someone.
Absolutely.
And you don't
So,
have to commit forever. People think, it's like getting married, and
well, you,
you can do some sessions, you can see how you feel, you can work with a few therapists and see who you think is the best fit for you. You don't have to like try one person and then you're locked in with that person forever for like a lifetime commitment. You want to make sure that you have a good connection with the other person, that you feel like they can understand your perspective and that you communicate really well.
so now you're doing some special things during this entire period. Will you talk to me about what you're doing to kind of be of service in this situation?
I really noticed an uptick in messages and emails that I've been receiving about self-care. It's like,
Yeah.
how do I kind of keep my head together while I'm going through this, especially for people that are parents. And I also don't want to neglect older adults as well. Many of us have aging parents as well. So you're kind of the sandwich generation folks that are raising kids and have parents that are older as well. Mentally, it's incredibly stressful right now to kind of balance things on both ends. So I've decided to offer some self-care sessions, individual sessions with folks who are just kind of trying to sort through everything that's going on right now and develop a specific self-care strategy. So
Right.
what I might suggest for one person, I'm not going to suggest for someone else if that's not within their realm of possibility. So it's going to be whatever works.
That's great. So what do people do? We reach out to you via social media?
You can reach out. I'll have the sessions live on my site. You can follow me on Instagram at Rhonda Smith LCSW, and I'll be posting all of the updates on the sessions and what I have available.
Okay. So before we go, can you talk about one last thing? I find sometimes what's really helpful is the idea of being as much in the present moment as possible, because our reality has shifted. And so yesterday is different than today, and we don't know about tomorrow.
Yeah.
But this is really what we have in the present moment. And I find that when I kind of pull myself back from the past and from the future, that is when I feel the most in control. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I am a big proponent of making sure folks get fresh air and can, at least if they can't be in nature, to hear nature.
Hmm.
Because for myself and my practice with mindfulness, I think, when you can really stop and be still and you can hear, right? You can hear birds chirping, you can see leaves, whatever this case may be, when you can really stop and be still, that's when you're going to feel the most peace.
Right.
Because you feel connected. Even though you're by yourself and you're alone, you feel so connected with not just other people, but with the planet.
Right.
And I think it's really important that we tap into our connection with the planet at this point, right? Not just other people, but with nature in general, and that we are all a part of this planet, that is continuing to function. And I think just even hearing animals or seeing, birds or different, it's an important reminder, and it's a great grounding practice.
Oh,
If you
my
can
God.
get fresh air, like it's amazing. And when I do my meditation, I love doing it outside, and I love to really just stop and hear all the sounds. And, I know when people start meditating, they're like, I don't hear anything. You're not going to hear anything at first, but if you're quiet long enough, you will start to pick up on all kinds of sounds that you would never normally hear. You're just going about your day. It's like, I don't hear anything.
I know.
I don't hear
It's so
anything.
true.
I'm
I think
rushing.
that's
I'm
how
going here. I'm going there. Like I'm doing my thing. I'm in the box. But when you really stop, when you can really stop and hear those sounds, it's just so incredibly grounding. It's very powerful.
Oh my God, you are my soul sister, because I love to meditate. And I swear that's how I heard the ice cream man today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was just so like in the distance. But when you said thinking about the world, that just really blew my mind, because, one of my meditations today, I was visualizing light around the globe, our planet. So it's because we all our planet needs like a hug. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's almost like we're all kind of like suffering. And so we all collectively need to comfort each other in a way through this. It's like, it's our planet, it's our earth, it's nature.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's the trees, it's our air. It's like, it's our world. We all share the same world, So
Absolutely. And it's like, the more we tap into that energy, I just think that's how you combat the loneliness too, that we talked about earlier, because you're not alone.
No.
If you can really tap into being mindful, if you can really tap into that and tap into your energy in that way, it's very clear. None of us are alone.
Yes.
We're not alone, but you've got to be able to be still to really tap into that.
And we matter. Everyone matters. And I think that, when we think about when people get depressed and they feel disconnected, because the root of it is feeling like you don't matter or you don't have a purpose. But I'm just here to tell you that everyone has purpose on this planet. Every decision everyone makes reverberates, and it impacts the life of someone else, for the good or for the bad. And sometimes, obviously, those bad things are used for good. But every time we make a choice, it matters. It's incredible. So I'm so happy to have just had this conversation with you. I hope that people listening, that it's helpful. I mean, it's helpful to me. I didn't know who I was going to tell the ice cream man story to today. That would not be like, you cried because you heard the ice cream man.
No, I get it. I totally get it. I was definitely the right person. I totally get it.
So, you know what? And I just feel like, if that helped me to release whatever was pent up in me as a result of kind of like this situation, I just want that to be something that gives other people permission. Like, if you dropped an egg on the ground today when you were making breakfast and you cried, it's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Look, if reality TV is your escape, like it is mine at this point, go for it. It's whatever works at this point, that's going to lift you up and lift your spirits, whatever it is. I say go for it.
And the other thing that's really important is, it's important. I can't stress this enough, because I learned this, myself when I was healing from breast cancer many years ago, is that you have to let emotion out, because it stores in your body. You don't realize how much emotion and tension that you hold in your body. So you have to figure out a way to release that emotion, whether it's working out or whatever it is. It's like, don't hold it in. It doesn't help you heal. And if our
Absolutely.
goal is to keep our immune system strong, you have to make sure that you're letting things out. So
Yeah, absolutely. You have to allow yourself to feel it to even know it's there.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
Rhonda, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I know everybody's going to love hearing what you have to say. And we're looking forward to what you're going to be doing online. I will be there. And I'll make sure everybody has all the info that they need to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm Evelyn Brooks, and you've been listening to Built by a Boss. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or your favorite place. Please consider giving us a 5-star review and a comment. It really helps other people find us who might like the podcast. Let us know if this information helps you, what people you'd like to hear from, and what topics you'd want us to cover. You can follow us on Instagram and visit our website. And you can find me at In My Solitude LA, where I create intention and goal-setting workshops. Also, if you're a female-owned brand with a message that is in line with the Built by a Boss podcast, we'd love to have you as a sponsor, so reach out to us. Finally, thank you so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate you. Until next time, be kind, be brave, be better, be a boss.